Hey guys, welcome back to another video with Florida. My name is Mike. Today we're going to be tying a fly called the photo shrimp. This is a little variation that I came up with for the Caribbean. First thing we're going to do is take our hook, throw it in the vise, and we are going to start our thread right behind the eye of the hook and work it pretty far forward, just around to right where that hook starts to bend a tiny drop, pretty much in line with the barb of the hook. I'm going to come in here with my dubbing wax. I'm going to put a healthy little bit on this thread. I'm going to take my first material, which is SLF dubbing, and I'm just going to take a little clump in my fingers and twist it around that thread, making around a 4 to 5 inch dubbing noodle, and then spinning that right around where that bend of the hook kind of just starts, building up that same spot just a little bit. If you get a little bit too clumpy, you kind of back off that thread a little bit and retighten it. You want a nice little tight thread bump here. Once you got that there, we are going to come in here with our comb. Just try to comb this out a little bit. Pick those fibers out just a little bit. It's easier to do this now than it is to do it later. You almost want to break some of these fibers if possible. Just trying to pick it out as best you can. Alright, once we got that there, I'm going to take my Krystal Flash. This is 2 pieces of black. I'm going to fold that, make a V, and I'm going to pull that right alongside. I'm going to tie that in right behind that dubbing. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim those long, because we are going to trim 2 shorter, maybe around a 1/2 inch or so, or a full inch, and the other 2 a little bit longer than that. Those are going to be the antennas or feelers. Now we can come in here with our rubber legs. These are actually silly legs. I'm going to take my thread. I'm going to make a V with my legs, pull all of them tight, bring them to the closer side to me. Then I'm going to take 2 of the legs, pull them forward. I'm going to work my thread, pulling them down a little as I come forward, so they sit on the top side of the shank of the hook, or sorry, the hook point side of the shank of the hook. And then once you get those tied in, I'm going to reach over, grab my other set of legs, kind of pull them downward and wrap those in. It's okay if they're flared out to the side right now, because we're going to put another little bit of dubbing to hold them forward. So I'm going to clean those wraps up, pull my legs all the way forward. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put another healthy clump of wax on there. Now I have 2 different colors of ice dub. I'm going to take that ice dub and I'm kind of just going to blend it in my fingers. I'm going to pull a good little bit out. Just mix that up just a little bit. Gives it a little bit more depth to that fly. Once you got that, you can go ahead and dub that on. Make another dubbing noodle. Just spin that right in between your fingers. Not super dense, but definitely not gappy. I don't want big holes in the noodle. I'm going to do about 4 or 5 inches here. I'm going to walk my thread back up so I have a little bit better control. Pull everything forward. Wrap that really nice and tight all the way up to where it holds those legs forward or toward the bend of the hook. Wrap that really nice and tight so all that stuff is facing forward. And I could come in here, kind of comb this out again. Like I said, you almost want to break some of these fibers. The buggier the better. All right. Once we got that combed out, it's going to be the front section of our fly. Then we can come in here. I'm going to pinch right on that V. These are the easy shrimp eyes. I'm going to pinch right on that V. I'm going to kind of figure out where I want these eyes to be facing. I want them ideally right in line with that barb of the hook. So once we have that measured out and bent flat, I'm going to tie that right in line, right about there. I'm only going to wrap up on this a couple times, lift the tag, and trim that out. And then put a couple securing wraps just to make sure that's really nice and tight down. Wrap all the way up. And then those shrimp eyes are just so easy to work with. Very, very clean and easy to tie in. Next up, I'm going to take my thread. I'm actually going to walk it all the way back to the eye of the hook. I'm going to come in here with my 16-pound Mason hard mono and some flat jaw pliers. I'm just going to crimp 2 or 3 times, just a little bit so we get a better bite. I'm going to take my thread and capture that right behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to tie that down really, really tight, putting a lot of pressure here. I'm going to come in here with my drop bead, Umpqua drop bead. We're going to put that on that mono. I'm going to take my thread, go all the way in front of that drop bead and capture it. And we're going to capture that and give it a couple really tight securing wraps down. I'm going to work my thread all the way up to where it gets just to the beginning of that ice dub. And then we could trim that other mono out of there. And then we could wrap over that nice and tight. I'm actually going to do a couple parachute wraps around that drop bead, making sure it's really tight and tight. Walk my thread forward to right behind those eyes. You can kind of manipulate the eyes by pulling them alongside. And then next up, another dubbing noodle. I'm going to take my wax, and then this time we're using EP shrimp dub. Take our EP shrimp dub and we're going to dub another 5 or so inch noodle. Be pretty generous with this material. Maybe around a 4.5 inch noodle. Alright, once we get that aside, I'll walk my thread back up. Make sure you start wrapping right behind those eyes really tight. Add a little bit of bulk right behind the eyes. It's okay if you went a little bit short on the dubbing noodle. You can always just add a little more. Shorter is easier than longer. So I'm going to add a little more wax. Add a little bit more of that shrimp dub. Nice and tight. And then we are going to stop this dubbing noodle in front of our eyes, making sure we get full coverage of that drop bead. We're going to stop that thread about 1 full eye length back. So you're leaving a little room up front. And then we could come in here and comb this out. Like I said, be very thorough combing this out. It's okay if you break some fibers. It's actually kind of what we're looking to do on this dubbing noodle. Rake some out of here. Pop some of those strands, loosen them up, make it look nice and fluffy. And you can pull everything forward. Once we got that, I'm going to come in here with my EP bunny brush. I'm going to pull the tips of that so I have a good clean tie-in point. Just pinch a tiny bit off. And I'm going to tie that in right behind the eye of the hook. I'm going to work it forward just a little bit, just tying that tip in. I'm going to move my thread right behind the eye of the hook again. With this brush, I'm only going to add 2 wraps, making sure to palmer it really nice and tight. So that's 1, and that's 2. This adds tons of movement to this fly. And then with everything right there, we can walk our thread right in front, capture it by pulling up, pulling everything toward the bend of the hook with our fingers and doing 2 capture wraps. I'm going to come in here and trim this out as tight as I possibly can. Pull everything back toward the bend of the hook. Get a little piece hanging out the front, you can just chop that off. And then we can whip finish with 2 sets of 3. Pulling everything nice and tight. Cleaning up that head just a little bit. Perfect. Trim that thread off. Then we could come in here and trim the legs out after we comb it all out a little bit. Perfect. Once we get that, we can trim the legs to our desired length. I'm going to trim these silly legs. The first 2, I'm going to trim about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and the second set of legs I'm going to pull together. Trim them right around 2 inches or so. And that's going to be the done photo shrimp. Super buggy little pattern. Basically replaces a gotcha style shrimp. Lands extremely soft with that drop bead. Has great movement. Looks awesome in the water. Nice hook. Good presentation when it lands from that drop bead. Just an all-around awesome Caribbean fly. Don't get me wrong, you could even throw this down in Biscayne Bay or the Florida Keys. Thanks for watching today's video. As always, we hope you appreciate it, and we hope to see you guys out on the water.